2.7 million people who submitted public comments in just 60 days. And the core message was really simple. Keep public lands in public hands. Let's hear that. Keep public lands in public hands. Keep public lands in public hands. Keep public lands in public hands. Thank you, thank you. That's what this is all about. Obviously, the Trump administration is trying to destroy the major progress we've made in protecting public lands and public spaces. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen. We're going to hear from a lot of senators and a couple of my colleagues. Again, 2.7 record public comments in 60 days. Let's make sure that President Trump and Secretary Zinke listen to the public for a change and not just the polluters. That's the message. Keep public lands in public hands. Listen to the public and not the polluters. Let's get started with the rest of our speakers. It's my pleasure to first introduce Martin Heinrich, the senator from the great state of New Mexico, one of the many champions on this issue.
Thank you all for coming out. I want to say a few words on behalf of two monuments, and then I'll mention a third, that are near and dear to my heart because they're in New Mexico for starters, and say a few words on behalf of the tens of thousands of New Mexicans and millions of Americans who spoke up as part of this process. Rio Grande del Norte National Monument and Organ Mountains Desert Peaks are, in my view, the gold standard for what public land conservation and community-based conservation should look like. There's been a lot of talk about what Washington did. Well, with these two monuments, Washington didn't do anything. They just listened to the local voices. And it was not President Obama who woke up one day and said, oh, I'm going to create two monuments this week in New Mexico. What's the map look like? He was listening to my constituents, to the mayors, to the city councilors, to the county commissions who passed resolutions. He was listening to the veterans and the teachers and the sports tribes who worked for decades to make these two national monuments a reality. And I think any effort to turn that back would be simply. So the question we have before us today is, we have these places that are so critical to the culture and history of our states. We have these places that are absolutely critical to the economic vibrancy of a state like New Mexico. We have seen tourism go up. We've seen visitation go up. We've seen local gross receipts and lodgers taxes and visitation and business development because of these monuments. So
Antiquities Act and then later became part of our national park system. These presidents realized that these special places, these gems of the American outdoors, should be preserved not just for this generation, but in perpetuity. Well, this president has the wrong idea. He thinks that he can roll back the decisions made by previous presidents and somehow return these lands to the exploration of oil and gas. First of all, he's wrong. He doesn't have the authority to do that under the Antiquities Act, and we will fight him. But today is about the loud voice of the American people who in a very short period of time have come to join the forces to say by the millions, you cannot roll back the designation of Bears Ears or any of these monuments that we are fighting to protect. They have amazing scenic, historical, and cultural significance to our country. In my state, the Hanford Reach was established during the Clinton administration, and it is the last free-flowing stretch of the inland Columbia River and provides great habitat and outdoor recreation for many people in our state. And just as Bears Ears is world-class in its outdoor recreation, visited by rock climbers and some of the best desert crack climbing in the entire world, people like hunters, hikers, canyoneers, whitewater rafters, and mountain bikers have been privileged to visit this very special place. So no, we do not want to see the rollback of these important public lands at a time when the president doesn't even have the economics right. If somehow he thinks that this is valued because of oil and gas, he's dead wrong. The outdoor economy is responsible for $12 million of consumer spending each year. That is twice the value of oil and gas production in that state of just $5 billion. So to us, we know the economy's on our side, but more important, we are fighting for future generations. Thank you, Teddy Roosevelt, for what you gave us. Let's make sure we keep for the next generation these special places and show that every American is willing to weigh in, just like the millions that did now, to fight for these special, wonderful gems that belong to all of the American people. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague that I guarantee you was key to helping us fight the methane rule and be successful, our colleague from Colorado. Please join us, Mr. Bennet.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being out here. It's just a joy to be here with my colleagues from the West to talk about this important issue. And I think it's also telling how many young people are here today. I can tell you that people in Colorado, and I would guess all over the country, are sick and tired of a Congress that can't even seem to govern between the commercial breaks on the cable television at night. And what they really want is for us to look out for the next generation and the generation that's coming after us. And that's what this is really all about. That's the brilliance of what Teddy Roosevelt did. It wasn't easy in his time, just as it is not easy now, to say we need to take the long view. We do need to take the long view. This shouldn't even be up for debate right now. And it is because of the special interests that dominate this administration. But just like Martin Heinrich said from New Mexico, this has been a bottoms-up process in Colorado for our national monuments. When you think about Chimney Rock and the process the bipartisan process that led to Chimney Rock, the bipartisan process that led to Browns Canyon being designated a national monument, and disturbing that would be putting the judgment of some right-wing think tanks in Washington, D.C. in place of the people that I represent in Colorado, no matter what party they're in, who have sought to preserve these special places. And we're in the middle of July now, I guess, and if we were in Colorado, not here, what you would see if you drive around are license plates from all over the United States of America. It's sort of a boring place to play the license plate game because it's almost over before it begins. And that's because people have come from all over the country and all over the world to see the public lands, to enjoy the public lands that we've preserved in our state. And the last thing we want is for Washington, D.C. to be dictating a different outcome than the one we've been able to preserve as a state under the Antiquities Act. And the last point I'll make is this, and it was touched on both by Senator Cantwell and Senator Heinrich. This is critical to our economy in the West. I mean, we just had a massive trade show move from Utah to the state of Colorado because in Colorado, we support public lands, and in Utah, they haven't, particularly Bears Ears, but not just Bears Ears. And the reason they've wanted to plant their flag in Colorado is because they have seen that our policies are consistent with the economic priorities that they have and what the American people have. So this is a story both about, yes, about our environment, yes, about our public lands, but it's also about our economies in the West. And I don't want to see any damage done to that. The great thing about our outdoor retail economy is it's not subject to boom and bust. People look for opportunities to come there no matter what's happening in the broader economy. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank you for the fight. It's not over yet. Your voices are very important to making sure that rationality prevails. And speaking of rational people, how's that for a segue? Let me give you Catherine Cortez Masto, the great senator from the state of Nevada.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here today. I want to thank the League of Conservation Voters for their vital work, not just in Nevada, but across this country, in helping to protect our public lands and our national monuments. And of course to my colleagues who every day have been out there on the forefront fighting to protect our public lands. You know, somebody who was born and raised Nevada, I had the benefit of a father who loved the outdoors. He had 2 daughters. He took us camping and hiking everywhere we could to experience and grow a love for the outdoors. Why should we take that away from anyone else who should and deserves the right to have that experience? What we are fighting for are our parks, our national monuments. In Nevada, that's true. Just recently, Basin and Range and Gold Butte were designated as national monuments. I will tell you, I was just out at Gold Butte. It is absolutely beautiful. There are pristine areas that need to be protected. There are pristine areas that need to be preserved, that are sacred to some of our Native American reservations and tribal communities there. This is what we are fighting for. You have behind me this next generation. It is about their future, their right to enjoy their public lands for outdoor recreation. It is a right to our hunters, our sportsmen, to enjoy those public lands. It is a right for so many people, and we have to fight to protect against any privatization. You've heard my colleagues talk about the economy and how outdoor recreation generates an incredible economy. That's true for Nevada. Let me just give you some statistics, because in Nevada alone, the outdoor recreation economy generates 148,000 jobs and almost $15 billion. Gold Butte alone could contribute nearly $2.7 million per year in economic activity and increase the number of jobs by 60%. The Obama-designated national monuments generate a total annual economic impact of about $156.4 million, including direct and indirect impacts for local economies. And it is true that President Trump wants to take away these national monuments out of the hands of the American people and sell them off to private developers. Well, I will tell you, we are standing up in opposition, and the 2.3 or over 2 million people that had their voices heard, that actually reached out to make sure that their comments were heard by Secretary Zinke, feel the same way. And that's why we are here today. We will be united in this fight to protect our great outdoors, and I am happy to be here with my colleagues, with the League of Conservation Voters, and the fight is just beginning. Thank you all for joining us today. And let me introduce as well one of my colleagues, a wonderful colleague that I have the opportunity to work with, who is a ranking member that I have worked closely with, Senator Tom Udall.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and Brian, good to be here with you. I think you're going to be the cleanup batter today, so get ready here. Let me, first of all, thank the League and Colin and all of you for being here today. And just say each of the senators, I think, that have appeared here today have been real champions in terms of this monument issue and in terms of public lands. And today I think we're standing with millions of Americans who have spoken out against President Trump's attack on our national monuments. This is a politically motivated power grab, threatening our local economies and our nation's most treasured places. For over a century, 8 Republican and 8 Democratic presidents have designated national monuments. So this is a long, long national tradition. And each of these presidents knew that national monuments create jobs and are economic drivers. And they preserve the wonders for our children and our grandchildren. And you only have to visit one of these monuments to be able to find that out. We have 2 monuments that are threatened under this Trump designation: the Rio Grande del Norte and the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks in New Mexico. Those 2 monuments had virtually no opposition. What we're talking about is an effort at the local level where there were grassroots supports and people turned out and elected officials, local elected officials weighed in. I remember on the Rio Grande del Norte up near Taos, Secretary Salazar came out and he said, I've never seen a monument where I haven't heard from one person, where not one person who was in opposition. And so, and the same thing's virtually true with the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks down in southern New Mexico. These, as I've mentioned, these national monuments are vital economic engines. Both of these communities, Taos, New Mexico, and surrounding communities, and Las Cruces, New Mexico, have seen dramatic growth in their revenues. They've seen growth in their lodgers tax. They've seen additional people come. So it's pretty exciting when you see that. And I am tremendously encouraged by the 2 million people who wrote comments in favor of keeping these special places. And many of them are here, some of them are here from New Mexico, a neighboring state, and Colorado that I see. I just want to thank you for caring and being here and really making a difference. Now, my father, Stuart Udall, called for protecting large swaths of Bears Ears National Monument back in the 1960s. So this isn't something that is recent. This is something that's been going on for a long time. You can even go back before my dad to Harold Ickes, where he was talking about protecting the whole area, including Bears Ears. And so the point here is that we, the American people, have weighed in. We've had American leaders weigh in and say this is what we should protecting and this is what we should do. And so I think Bears Ears is probably the home to one of the most deeply cultural and historical antiquities collections we've ever seen. It's very sacred to Native Americans. And what happened in Bears Ears was absolutely unusual. All the Native American groups, the 10 tribes or so, gathered together with environmental groups and others, historic preservation groups. They all worked together on Bears Ears. And so what we see here is an incredible effort at the local level, which has come to the national level for these kinds of designations. And so thank you again for being here. And one of the real leaders, I mean, I love Hawaii, is the senator from Hawaii. They are going to, my understanding, by 2040 or 2050, they're going to be 100% renewable energy. I mean, haven't they done a good job and tackled an issue which is tremendously important to? I give you the great senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz.
On that note, aloha, everybody. That's pretty good. I got some people. It is great to be here. It's great to follow such great conservation leaders as Tom Udall, Martin Heinrich, Catherine Cortez Masto, and I'm here to add my voice to the support for the Antiquities Act, to the support for national monuments. Of course, I'm particularly passionate about Papahanaumokuakea, and I believe so strongly, not just in what we did, but in the fact that we did it the right way. You know, Tom talks about Bears Ears and the community support, the tribal support. And when we did Papahanaumokuakea, it came from a group of Native Hawaiian elders. They asked for this. They asked for this. We worked with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We worked with people who fish in the northwest portion, Go ahead if anybody needs to get that. I'll get it. This is, where is that? Pretty. Very pretty. It's different than Papa, but it's very pretty, and this is the legacy. And I just want to say that an attack on one of these monuments, whether it be terrestrial or ocean-based, whether it be cultural resources or ecosystem resources, is attack on all of them. This is totally unprecedented, what this administration is doing. The authorities in the Antiquities Act are total. And there's a reason for that, because it gives a president the authority to say something is of such significance culturally or environmentally that it should be set aside in perpetuity for generations and generations to come. The Antiquities Act was not set up so that decisions could be reversed according to the politics of the day. And that's what they're looking at doing. They're looking at the politics of today, and they're looking at reversing this. And so something that I'm so proud to have played some small role in, the preservation of 500,000 square miles. I get to brag on that because it's not clear that anybody is even in a legal position to ever beat that number, just because, you know, you got the territorial waters around the Hawaiian Islands, and it's really hard to find any place in the United States where you could do such a thing. It matters very much to me on a personal level. And to have gone through a public hearing process, to have gone through a couple of years of scoping, to have gone through months and months of negotiation with the dayboat fishermen, with the long line fleet, and to have come to a resolution that protects our legacy, as Bears Ears does, as Grand Staircase Escalante does, as all of our national monuments, and not just the ones that were recently declared. But to the extent that this administration thinks that they can reverse decisions made in the previous administration, there is no reason to think that a future president wouldn't think that it was within their purview to reverse any monument declared at any time. And so we have to understand what's at stake right here. It is literally our legacy of preserving culture and land. And so we've got a fight in front of us. I think we will win. I think we will win in the first instance through the so-called public comment period. I'm not getting it that time. But I think if there are moments where we have to litigate this, the Antiquities Act is a very strong and clear statute, and we will win on that basis. But we'll also win because the public is behind us. There is no constituency for what they're doing. There is no constituency for what they're doing. I have not met any voters who walk up to me and say, could you please reverse all the monuments, all the preservation, all the legacy building that was done in previous administration. There is no constituency for that. And so I want to thank everybody for being here. This is the beginning of what I believe will be a long fight, but it's a fight that we're going to win. And as I look at these young people, I just want you all to know, I can't tell how old you are anymore because I'm not that young anymore, but I will tell you that I got my start in politics when I was 16 years old, and I was fighting to ban chlorofluorocarbons at the state legislature. And I also want you to know that we won a couple and we lost a couple, but my entry into politics was as a result of a certain state legislator falling asleep while I was talking. So whether we win in the first instance or not, I want you all to be committed to public service in the long run. And without further ado, I want to introduce someone who has been essential to this fight over many, many years, and that's Colin O'Mara, the president of the National Wildlife Federation.
So I think I have one question for our friends down the street. Can you hear us now? 2.7 million voices. 2.7 million voices talking about national monuments. This is incredible. And the reason it's so important is that when you look at where the numbers came from, it wasn't just folks on the coasts, it wasn't just folks from liberal parts of the country, it was Republicans and Democrats who think of themselves not as partisan actors, but just as Americans. The average American cannot afford to go to a duck hunt club, cannot afford to hunt on private lands. Average Americans, for the most part, depend on their public lands, on their national monuments for their recreation. Right now, the outdoor economy in this country is $887 billion. It employs 7.6 million people. More than 70% of folks that hunt and fish on some kind of public land. And you know what, as someone who my wife just gave birth to a 3-week-old, and I have a 5-year-old, I want her to be able to, whether she chooses to go turkey hunting or bird watching in the Grand Canyon, or she decides to go trout fishing in I guess the in the Grand Canyon, or maybe a little bit further south, when she decides to go in the upper Mississippi and maybe in the upper Missouri, take a look at the elk. I mean, these are amazing, amazing places that need to be preserved for future generations. We've never seen anything like this before. You know, I want folks to know the historical nature of this kind of review. These weren't partisan. When you look at the support that came out for Rio Grande do Norte, right? You think of the support that came out for Browns Canyon. You think about the support for Papahanaumokuakea. These are bipartisan projects that came together not because somebody in the White House or somebody at Interior or somebody at NOAA decided they wanted to designate a spot on a map. It's because local folks knew these were places worth protecting, not just for the near term, but for generations to come. That's what we're fighting for. And so, yes, there's going to be a fight to come. I think we're right on the law. I think we're absolutely right that the president does not have the authority to undo monument designations. But we're going to have to win on the ground. We're going to have to win in Congress. We're going to have to win in the courts if we want to protect these for future generations. This is part of our birthright. In a lot of ways, this is what makes America, America, right? These are the places that tell our history. These are the places, both good and bad. These are the places that we allow to share with our kids. Every American can live like a king or queen on our public lands. We don't have to ask some sovereign for the ability to participate and enjoy our birthright. That's not common everywhere. It's one of the things that makes us unique as Americans. So to begin to erode that, an attack on one monument is an attack on them all. And I'm so proud of the partnership across conservation groups, sportsman groups, hunting and fishing organizations, the Latino community, the African American community, all kinds of environmental justice groups coming together, local governments. I mean, this covered everybody. This is not a right-left issue. This is an American issue. And frankly, this is a fight that we need to win. So my message now is to join me one time. Can you hear us now? Ready? Can you hear us now? Can you hear us now? So finally, I'd like to introduce a phenomenal leader, someone who's been great making sure that all voices are part of the conservation community, and not just the few, making sure that table is big and representing all of the American diversity. And that is my good friend, the president of the Hispanic Access Foundation, Maite Arce. She's been a phenomenal leader bringing voices across the country to make sure that our monuments are for all. Maite?
I can't believe that I'm here today to talk about the potential elimination or reduction of our national monuments. One of our partners, Pastora Ceci Ruano in Idaho, I called her up and said, have you seen the executive order by President Trump that asks Secretary Zinke of the Department of Interior to review our national monuments and determine whether or not they should continue as with the protections that they have now. And Pastora Ceci says, goodness gracious, Lord, we worked so hard to support our national monuments, our public lands, for not just for our families and our livelihood, but also for future generations. And now this. And so I said, can we do it? Can we get our community to respond online and share their opinion and flex their civic muscle? And she said, sí se puede. And so sure enough, we are part of, Hispanic Access Foundation is a part of a coalition of 18 Latino groups that includes Por la Creación, Faith-Based Alliance, Mi Familia Vota, the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, and many other amazing organizations. We informed our community nationwide about the executive order and what was at risk. And through the Latinos for Heritage campaign, and their response in support was unprecedented. We were just so gratified, so happy to see the incredible response, and everyone, as they considered their local monuments like the San Gabriel Mountains, like the California Desert Monuments, including Mojave Trails, Oregon Mountains, Desert Peaks, Gold Butte. These monuments mean so much to us, and so of course they said, oh my goodness, of course we're going to support, of course we're going online, we'll find our way to navigate through this process, and we will make sure our voice is heard. The response to public lands and the protections of our national monuments by the Latino community nationwide is unprecedented. Never before has the Latino community responded so quickly and so powerfully to an environmental issue as they have for protecting public lands and national monuments. So we're thrilled that our community is so much cares about our environment and so much cares about our national monuments. And this support includes a unanimous resolution passed by the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, which is really important to note. And we'd like to call on Secretary Zinke and let him know, as well as President Trump, that we are deeply supportive of our public lands. They are very important to us. Our national monuments must be protected and remain unchanged. We believe it's our moral obligation to preserve these lands for families and our communities now, but for future generations. And we call on Secretary Zinke to not make any changes to the monuments. It's vital to our families, it's vital to our cultural heritage, and it's vital to our nation. Thank you.
Thank you all. And again, special shout out to those who are holding the signs and being the props and those great Protect Bears Ears t-shirts and those Our Lands, Our Votes stickers from LCV and all the other great t-shirts. And thank you all. So if any of the press want to ask any questions, feel free. The senators all had to leave to go to their caucus. If not, we will call this a wrap. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you, folks. Well done. Well done.